Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zack Cherry, and with me as always is...
Eddie of Edward is Truth.
And in this episode, we are going over the entire Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise from 1974 to 2017, because the new one is coming out next week or in a few days from the release of this episode on Netflix. So I'm mildly excited about that. I know that this is not a franchise that I'm like super crazy about, but I know that you are obsessed.
I am. I'm literally like scared to talk about it because I'm in a very confined kind of window on the podcast on YouTube, and I'm afraid I'm going to gesture emphatically and jump up and down and knock shit over. I'm going to try very hard to contain myself. Physically, it will probably have to all channel vocally and maybe a lot of face, just a lot of like, I'm going to be shocked probably at a lot of what you have to say.
Yeah, I was going to say this is probably going to be a very contentious debate between you and I, which is, it's fun when we get to these because normally like we're pretty much like in agreement with a lot of things. So I'm prepared for the worst, but I'm expecting the best. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each movie of the 8 that are currently there. So that goes... the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, or Part 2 from 1986, Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 from 1990, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre The Next Generation, aka the the Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
From
1994.
That was the original title.
Or 1997, whenever it was released.
97, depending.
Yeah. Which one it is. And then the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003. And then the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning from 2006. Texas Chainsaw 3D. Although I've seen in the actual like beginning of the movie, it just says the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on that as well. So that's 2013.
Or just Texas Chainsaw. Isn't it just Texas Chainsaw?
I think in the movie
like
it said the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But it popped out at you in 3D. Okay. And then Leatherface.
Yeah.
So and that was 2017. So there's every single title of these movies is the same. Like, this is more confusing than the Fast and the Furious franchise. Because we've got like, and now the new one coming out this year is called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So it's like
Texas Chainsaw.
With
no the.
Is there no the?
I checked because they eliminated the because they can't put a the in front of it because the original is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Usually it's reversed and the original doesn't have a the, and then they just put a sequel and put a the in front of it. But yeah, it's
made all the more confusing as like people talk about the Halloween franchise and how timeline wise like that's all over the place. And you have 3 movies that are just called Halloween, and really if you look at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the timeline is even more fucked up, and I'm gonna get you to kind of like simplify that for us as we go along, because you know this better. Like, I'm glad you're the authority on Texas Chainsaw Massacre here between you and I. So you're probably gonna be like teaching me a lot, and as another fun little game, because we're gonna have the cherry picker at the end as always. As we go through each one, we're going to give the movie our own like unique subtitle, since I feel like the movie titles are all the same for all of them, like because there's 2 that are called Leatherface, there's like 5 that are called Texas Chainsaw, so we're gonna make it more catered to us. And I know that you like have pre-thought of all these. I'm just gonna like make it up as we go along because it's more fun for me that way.
Fun.
So
okay, cool.
So start us off with 1974.
Where to start?
Well,
okay.
Where did you first
let me
see
just.
This?
Oh God. Okay. It was like late 90s, and I was in my teens, and it was on, I believe, the Independent Film Channel. And it was on like in the afternoon, and I think maybe it was around Halloween or something. I just remember thinking, "Oh, I've heard that title like my whole life, and I've never seen this movie. I don't know anything about it except there's probably a chainsaw or something. Yeah. It takes place in Texas." So I just watched it, and I remember, yeah, I knew it was a horror movie, and I was already totally into horror by then. I remember I just sat there and I watched it, and back in the day, I don't know if IFC has commercials now, but it didn't then. And so I just got to watch it in its entirety with no breaks. And I remember the first, however, I forget how much time elapses before Leatherface's appearance in the movie. But everything prior to that was just kind of odd and kooky and, dare I say, fun. But also just kind of, like mellow. I was like, okay, this is a legend. This is interesting. Whatever. And I sat there, and then all of a sudden, Leatherface made his legendary entrance, and that sliding metal door slammed, and there had been, I think, no real score to speak of. There were some dramatic stings here and there, but most of the music was just like off of like the radio inside the van and everything like that. So this dramatic sting happens, this boom, low rumble and everything, before Pam is about to get it. And I remember in my head, I just kind of thought, oh shit, the movie has begun. And I was chilled because I wasn't expecting that. Also because the kill, and it's been said so many times, but that kill, though bloodless and though like almost
Pam, or are we talking
obscured
about a different one? Because Pam's not.
No, Pam too, but before Pam with Kurt or Kirk. I always get them mixed up.
Kirk, I think it's Kirk. There's Kirk, Jerry, Pam, Franklin, and Sally.
It's Kirk.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so Kirk is there, and just with the legs, like, there's the no score, and just the legs just kind of like going, like whatever, wobble, 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 and like bang, bang, bang. And the fact that, like, I had heard of Leatherface, but it never really sunk in what that might mean. And the fact that I could tell from the minute I saw him, he's wearing a face. He's huge. He's got an apron, and I don't know. He seems to be hiding. Like and then everything that followed after that, everything that Leatherface did seemed to come from fear. And that is the most fucked up thing that I can behold. Nothing scares me more than someone who is motivated by fear, because they could be driven to do anything just to kind of like restrain you and keep you quiet. So yeah, that was my introduction. And by the end of it, I was just kind of like, what kind of mind fuckery is this shit? Like, oh my God.
It's interesting because you say that, like, that he's motivated by fear, because they are, like, closed off from society, like they're living in their own little bubble out there. And this, I think, I mean, I don't, like, from what I know of, like, pre-70s horror, like, a lot of it was, like the monsters, sort of like if it wasn't Dracula, Frankenstein, but just kind of like the Hammer remakes of all those. So it was just like throughout the 60s and stuff. So the 70s was when things really started to get heavy. But the thing is, and I mean, like, I first saw this probably when I was like 15 or 16. Like it would have been like in like the early 2000s, like the early or maybe late 90s. So I knew of Leatherface and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like you. Like, I'd heard of the name of the movie. I kind of just like thought of it more as like, that's kind of like you've got Halloween, you've got Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Leatherface of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was like the fourth franchise of just like the big heavies. Like, if you had to like, there's the big three with Michael, Jason, and Freddy, but then like Leatherface was also kind of there. So I just sort of like, it's another franchise to watch. And I remember it was really hard to find the movie at the time. I had to special order it from like my store here, and it took a very long time to arrive. Like, it might have taken like 3 or 4 months, and it was like this old shitty DVD copy of it. Like, it was not good quality at all. Like, it was like Pioneer or something. And that's the only copy of the movie I had for the longest time. Up until like recently, like maybe within the last 6 months, where I finally just like, okay, I'll buy it on Blu-ray. But I had this movie, and I'd watched it a handful of times, and I enjoy it for what it is. But it was just like, it wasn't one that, like, it's not a funny movie by any means. Like, it's, you know, I don't look at this and be like, oh, this is like campy and like Friday the 13th or anything like that, or Friday the 13th Part 3. But I still, like, I watch it, I'm like, I find it hysterical. Maybe not so much now, but as like a 15-year-old, because I'm like, you have Franklin, this character is just like, I don't know what, if he's there, if this, like, we're supposed to take him seriously as like Sally's invalid brother, but I'm just kind of like, shut up.
I think he's just that force in the van, that outsider to show us that, you know, like, I don't know, everybody kind of has a window into that van, like someone to identify with. And if you can't identify with anybody, you can at least identify with them by being annoyed by Franklin.
Okay, that's fair. I kind of see that as like them, you know, like they're going on this road trip, or like Sally had to go to this thing because did we find out if her grandfather was dug up, or it was just like not all of the graves were, but that's why she went there?
I don't recall ever finding out for sure. And also just because at that moment, all of a sudden it starts to open up into so many other things. Because little tangent, I'm sorry. Because one thing that I absolutely adore about this movie is how many layers Tobe Hooper builds into the progression, like kind of ushering us into the script. Because like the first thing we get is the sound of grave digging and that like camera grind, that sound effect that is synonymous with the franchise now. Then we get the sounds of real horror, the news reports over the radio going on about all this fucked up shit happening all over the United States and the United States only. And then the corpse exhibit, I like to kind of think of it. It looks like an art installation, like a fucked up art installation. Yeah. And then the armadillo roadkill, and the way we're introduced to Franklin relieving himself in a coffee can by the side of the road, and then introducing just like the heat, like and Pam sitting there talking about the retrogradation and about how everything is like fucked up in the stars right now, and then the smell of the old slaughterhouse, like just like one assault on your senses after another to just kind of pave the way for this
hitchhiker.
Worst
he's
night
like
ever.
An assault on the senses.
But oh god,
we'll get to him. But I just wanted to say, like, with Sally and that, like, I always just saw that as like her family or her parents were probably like, oh, you gotta go out there, or she wanted to, and they're like bring your brother, like, because they didn't want to deal with him at home. So that's why he was with them the whole time. Like, if you're going to go to the movies, make sure to bring your brother. You know, that's kind of like...
No, yeah, that's her whole life with Franklin, is asking him, because he's doing an impression of her, just like, come on, Franklin, it's bound to be a fun trip, and all that shit. And all I can think is like, I mean, she seems like a good person too. Like, I feel like she probably did invite him along without realizing, I guess, how hot it was going to get and how interminable the trip was going to feel with him just nonstop. I mean... Oh, God, that voice. Because also, there's something about his little, I don't know if we're going to call it a drawl or a twang or whatever it is, but his dialect that Franklin has that she doesn't really have, that it makes him infinitely more insufferable. He's the only person in the van with like a thick Southern accent, sitting there talking, no, Sally, I'm coming with you, Sally. I'm going to say every note that I got to say twice. And it's just, oh my God, it's like, will you just shut up? And but it's one more thing to just kind of turn the heat up on like the tension that they're all under, to the point where we get her wrestling with him for the flashlight because every one of their friends has disappeared into the house, and she's just screaming like, I can't push you down that hill by myself and everything. Oh, I'm in love. I'm absolutely in love. But I want to backtrack because you mentioned Edwin Neal, who, when you say funny, I love watching Edwin Neal as the hitchhiker's performance. Just because I feel like I'm inside his head from the second he gets inside the van, and I'm just kind of like everything that he's thinking just registers on his face. And there's like then the external exchanges that he has with them, just like, it's a good picture, you can pay me now. And then they say like, no, that's all right, we don't want the picture, and he just kind of takes it and just kind of, oh, I was gonna give you a real nice picture, but all right, well. How about you come over and have dinner with my family? We all have head cheese. You'll like it. And he's just one rejection after another.
We should pick him up. But who was it that was just like, no, he looks creepy or just something?
Yeah.
Who said that?
Probably Pam. Probably Pam. I feel like it must.
I feel like I probably identify with Pam more because I ain't picking up no hitchhikers, and I would be like that person in the band and just be like, "Are you fucking crazy?" No.
And Pam is fucking hilarious too to me because like everything that she reacts to prior to her ultimate comeuppance is just like a mug, like she has no problem sneering and like letting somebody see her ew kind of reaction on her face. I absolutely adore her. And also the fact that she's like so like kind of keyed into astrology and shit like that. I'm like, yeah, it's 1973. Go for it, baby.
What is Pam's zodiac sign?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know if you identify with her, she's probably Scorpio. Oh, okay. I don't know. She doesn't seem spiky enough to be a Scorpio.
That's something that we like to do here. We like to think about what people's zodiac signs are in movies. So if this comes up, it's probably a recurring thing. But I know because they were reading it, they're like, oh, look at Franklin's horoscope is saying that like he shouldn't have left the house today or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't even want to start to think about what his sign would be. I might piss off a lot of people.
Yes,
1/12 of our listeners. But
a vocal minority.
This is like a really. I mean, it's not the longest movie. It's probably like the shortest one out of the franchise, maybe. But it's quick pace. I like that. Once they start to, that's something because I hadn't seen it in a while. That watching it again, and I was just like, I forgot like how quickly they all start to like converge on the house, and then it's like one after another. It's like the next scene, it's just like someone new is now gonna like wander off and like let's go check on them. So that makes this movie like a lot more tolerable. Like this is probably for me the best one, and it's what like I like this one a lot. Like I don't have any issue with it because it is so groundbreaking for its time, and it did kind of like invent that rural horror subgenre, which we've seen play out so many times here, and just in terms of like I don't think that like most of the characters, like the two boyfriends, like Kirk and Jerry, like forgettable. Like I don't know anything about them, but at least with like Pam and Sally and Franklin especially, like those are characters that left an impression. So I especially like where like the franchise goes later on, like once we start getting into the Friday the 13th, where characters do get like a little bit more personality or just time to shine. So
expendable.
This really was like the first of its kind.
Mm-hmm. And I also have one thing that I really, really appreciate about it is I totally agree with you in terms of just like it feels like a cinematic movement, like each moment that propels not the story, but just the action forward. It doesn't feel like your typical premeditated, organized story. It just kind of feels like a progression of things happening, and they're happening to you. It's like an assault on the senses, and but at the same time, it doesn't feel thoughtless or mindless at all to me, because I love all the takes that they make about the automation in blue collar industries, or at least the blue collar level of the industries, ironically enough, the dehumanization of the work industry over in the slaughterhouse. So now the hitchhiker can't work there anymore because they've got that new air gun to take out the cattle and everything. And there are a lot of people who subsequently after this movie's release have kind of remarked on its social commentary as far as the what's the word I'm looking for? The pending irrelevance of the American worker. And basically this is kind of like a worst case scenario of what the American worker can be driven to, basically scrounging like predator animals for food to be at the top of their food chain the best they can. And because they're on the outskirts of society and so far removed, they can basically do what they want. They've managed to escape the law long enough to acquire all those cars, outside their house.
Are able to because obviously that this movie is enriched with social commentary, but I'm glad that you're here to kind of make sense of that, and I hope that you're able to draw that out of more of the sequels.
I can try.
Yeah. But I've only ever looked at this movie on just more of a at face value of just what's happening in it. So it's funny because this isn't really a slasher movie, just in terms of like Halloween and everything followed. But it does have elements of that. But I think that the difference is that they're with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you have these characters who, rather than having the evil influence kind of come into their territory, it's the opposite. So they're wandering into
outside the boundaries of
sure, whatever.
Yeah.
Just couldn't think of it to say.
I know what you're saying. No, totally. And I just want to also, because I love these cast members, I also just want to call attention to Marilyn Burns, who went through fucking shit to play Sally Hardesty. Literally having her finger cut open by Gunnar Hansen because the device wasn't working, and they were all suffering so hard that it was a blade that was taped up, and I guess there was a tube on the side that wasn't toward the camera, and he just ripped the tape off in one take because they weren't getting it, and she was incapacitated, bound and gagged, but witnessing everything that's happening. And when you see him cut her finger open to feed Grandpa, that is literally her blood out of her wound. She didn't know he was going to do that. He just wanted to get it over with, and he apologized afterwards. And now,
she definitely
she
suffered a lot. That's the thing with her, and Sally Hardesty. I don't think she gets enough credit just in terms of all the final girls, because that closing shot of her on the back of that pickup truck with the hysteria and the laughing, that is such an iconic moment of horror that that might be right up there when you picture things in horror movies. It's just Leatherface chasing after the truck with her on the back, just go, 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 ha ha.
They are both notorious gifs now.
You actually I do get a sense she must have suffered on that set, because it was she jumped through two windows. And obviously
well, she didn't do.
Up there.
She didn't do one of them, but yeah. No, it was terrible. It was terrible.
But it's And at the end,
running
she's
and screaming
running down
all
the highway,
night,
and they're slicing at her back. And we're just talking about the character at this point, not actually Marilyn Burns. But I just feel if you want to talk about trauma, and I'll just touch upon the new movie coming out here. Because if people have seen the trailer for the new Texas Chainsaw, and there's been a lot of correlations made to Halloween 2018.
I see.
Just in terms of...
Haven't seen it.
You haven't watched the trailer?
No. I don't want to know.
Well, for the sake of this podcast, we got to just... I'm just going to say that they're basically setting up Sally as... the same type of scenario with Laurie.
I knew about that.
Okay, then that's all I'm saying. But only it's 50 years rather than 40 years. But this is clearly a character who has lived with this trauma for that long, and it's just and I don't, want to go on an anti-Halloween 2018 rant or anything, because that's not what this is. But I just think it's funny that when you compare that to Laurie's story in the original Halloween, where it's okay, you walked across the street, you saw some dead bodies of your friends, and you got chased to the other side, which is terrifying. That's not good for anyone. But to live with that for 40 years, and to the point where you're living in a shack out in the woods, and you've set up this security defense system in your house with traps and stuff. That's what I don't find believable, at least with Sally. This is a character I would identify with the word trauma, because every fucking moment of this movie that you see with Sally, it's just dear God, what is Is it this movie that the tagline is like, who will escape and what will be left of them, or is that something?
Who will survive and what will be left of them?
Yeah, okay,
yes.
okay, good. I'm glad that was, because it could have been like The Hills Have Eyes or anything.
No, this is it.
But that's exactly what it is, because it's just like, she survived, but like, and you know, physically, you know, she did have a lot of injuries, but for the most part, I think that the thing that was affected the most is psychologically what this has done to her. That's kind
she's
of like
laughing.
She's,
and not triumphantly, I guess, but she's not quite tethered to the earth anymore in those final shots of her, while she's just go.
Because of what she went through,
God.
that is real trauma. So I'm interested to see this new movie, just to kind of see how they play that, because I think that might be a little more realistic, just in terms of like holding on to an experience for that many decades.
And I'm only sad that Marilyn Burns and Gunnar Hansen aren't around to play those parts, because that would have been amazing.
They had their opportunity, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But we should probably move on to the next movie here. But before we do that, do you have your alternate title?
No, well, I only did it for the sequels. I only did it to the sequels because the first one is perfectly named, so it will remain The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay,
do you have any other kind of alternate title?
Only if you're gonna say one, but I was gonna call it like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Franklin's Day Out, or just something like that. Yeah. Franklin's Day Out.
Cool.
Because it just reminds you of like the Franklin, like the little cartoon turtle, I think it is. You know, just like
the cartoon turtle.
I think he's a turtle.
No,
Franklin the turtle. Okay, whatever.
The only cartoon Franklin I know is from Peanuts. Anyway, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Yes. How did this one come into your life?
I mean, I think that like after I saw the first one, I was just kind of like, okay, we got to go through the rest of them. And I don't know, like I've seen pretty much all of these movies like concurrently with their release, like from the remake onward. But like I think like with 2, 3, and 4, I'm not sure which order I saw them in. But 2 might have actually been like the last one, because I remember seeing it and just like being like, what is this? This is like so different from like the original. Just because this is campy as fuck, and it's a kind of camp that I really love. And there's like, I mean, obviously, like I think that Gunnar Hansen is probably the best Leatherface, but I don't know the actor in this one who does it, but I just like, there's something I love about his like little like shimmy with the chainsaw, and it's like chasing, and then he stops and he's like, ooh, like, what is this? What is going on? That I don't know. This to me, it's like this movie does drag a little. There are a lot of scenes with, and maybe this is more so just my annoyance with what's the actress's name who plays Stretch?
Caroline Williams?
Yeah. Love her. I love her in it. I enjoy her character, but there's so many things that she does in this that just frustrate the hell out of me, that I'm just like, oh my God. Like, not even necessarily like stupid decisions, but it's almost like she's incapacitated for, like, you know, there's that whole scene where Leatherface puts the face of her coworker on her, and she's just like walking around with it on. And I know she has the hands tied behind the back, but it's like, it's one of those things that's so frustrating that's just like, why aren't you trying harder to like get out of this? It's just me. I just felt like, why? Like, I'm suffering through this, and it's not like a suffering, and like it's still like campy and funny, but I just feel like, can we just like get on with it? Like there's a part in this movie that just like really slows down for me, and it's around that point. And there's like the family, like when they're at that, what is it? Is it like an amusement park or like an
abandoned amusement park? Yeah,
Is it,
like a non-name brand one, like just kind of like something people just kind of erected out of paper mache and chicken wire, basically. And it was abandoned.
And I love that setting, but it just seemed like there's so much like in that last part that just like where they're just running around in circles. So I don't know. This is one that I really enjoy, but it's so far removed from the original because it's just like the original is like for the most part like pretty serious, other than like Franklin. But this one is just off the rails. It's purposefully a comedy.
I see. That's what I absolutely adore about it, is the fact that like Tobe Hooper wanted to do something completely different, and for the most part, I think he got to achieve that. I know there was pressure from Canon because they started to see the dailies that he was turning in and go like, wait a minute, we wanted a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. Where's Grandpa? Where's the dinner table? Where's the scene where, she's like, bound and like getting hit in the head? And it's like, well, that was the first movie. We don't need to do that again. And actually, the only reason that's in is because Canon put the pressure on him to make it more like the first one. And I don't think the movie suffers that much for it because it's a very short, I think it's only about 6 minutes of the screen time. But, okay, I have to say...
6 minutes is a long time in movie time.
Yeah, but it's not as long as I kind of remember.
That part doesn't bother me as much. It's more so just like her like crouching behind rocks and not going anywhere. Like there's so much open space everywhere. Like turn around and run away. Find a hole.
When there's a maniac running around. Oh my god!
There are like tiny little exits everywhere in that place.
She doesn't know that they're exits. They could just be like passages that loop around and like empty out into a place that's more heavily populated.
Go through a passage to at least get away from...
I do. You and I are not going to see eye to eye on this because Caroline Williams as Stretch is to me and is to. Shall we say, Marilyn Burns, as say Amy Steele is to an Adrienne King of Friday the 13th. I love the original, and I will watch the original, and I will back her up every step of the way. But then they get a second movie, and there's a final girl that has even more agency, and even gets to like, I don't know, because I feel like one thing... If there's anything we can criticize the first movie for is that Marilyn Burns is essentially victimized over and over and over and over and over again. It's entertaining as fuck, but it's hard to watch and it can bum you out. But but Caroline Williams, just the fact that like, okay, from the beginning, like I just love the fact that she's just kind of like making her way. Stretch, I mean, just kind of like as a character making her way in the world. She's just doing this kooky kind of like, call-in radio show where she plays music that people request and whatever, and just doing like reports on chili, chili contests, cook-offs, chili cook-offs. And then here comes an opportunity. She has exposure to some kind of like atrocity that happened, and she knows that it's connected to other things that have been happening in the Northeast? Yeah, Northeast territory of Texas. And then she has an opportunity to actually affect some change, and she takes that opportunity. She's even the motivator behind fucking Lefty, Dennis Hopper's character, who I think is suicidal. I am convinced he doesn't really want to avenge anything, but that's like the bravado that he's putting forth, but that all he really wants to do is he is literally underground sawing off support beams as the cave falls down around him. Yeah. I really don't think he cares whether he lives or dies. In fact, I think he wants to go down.
It's just like, that's like the thing with that last act. Like, it's just like there's shit going on. We know that he's there doing stuff, but it's like the back and forth between it just felt very inconsistent to me. And I just want to clarify, like, I don't have any issues with Stretch or Caroline Williams, because she does, like, eventually, like at the very end, she rises to the occasion on the perch of this mountaintop of the amusement park or whatever it is, and is that like grandma like that's up there? Is that, yeah, he's saying grandma. Yeah. So just that kind of like her getting the chainsaw, and then she's the one doing like the manic chainsaw dance at the end. So I love that. Yes. Like, I love that the way the movie ends, because I'm just like, that's how like you end a movie. Not that the first one, like, great end to that movie as well. So I'm all for that. I'm all for that. I just felt that there was a little bit of lag before that.
But I don't feel what you feel, because honestly, like the sequence in the movie from the time Stretch is trapped in that oubliette with LG and Bubba and an electric carver, and he put, oh god, okay, because let me just explain to you. I have a flesh thing. I can't. And and so, some of we'll get to it with some of the other movies. Some of them should be a lot more effective on me than they are. But this one in particular, just the fact that he's using an electric carver, Bubba is. Now, Leatherface's name is Bubba. He's got a name for the first time. They got a name. They're the Sawyers for the first time. Drayton is Drayton Sawyer for the first time, and not just Old Man or the Cook. Mm-hmm. And the hitchhiker is gone, but he is posthumously named Nubbins. And Chop Top is,
so
I guess,
the same
his
character.
twin.
That was a confusing thing that I
am so glad you brought that up. Because the first time I saw the movie, I thought they were supposed to be the same character. I thought, like, okay, we're going to get into it. Okay.
Here we go.
Because this kind of goes back. This goes back to the first movie a little bit. The whole thing with Grandpa feeding on the blood and doing the little baby goo goo, whatever dance, like happy and everything. He was supposed to be an embryonic old man in the first movie, and what I got from him was reanimated corpse. And because I know that Tobe Hooper with the first movie wanted to make a movie about a family of Ed Geins, and each one of them was supposed to have like different elements of Ed Gein to them, that it just told me, like, well, I know Ed Gein was fascinated by voodoo, so what if this movie is suggesting that, like, like the reanimation of dead tissue is like possible, and that's what all those little, like chicken bone and human bone like sculptures are all about, that the hitchhiker is putting together. So we get to this movie and I see Chop Top for the first time, not knowing that he's Chop Top, because you have to watch it with like the subtitles to really get a lot of the lines they're saying, because it is so manic. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was Bill Moseley playing the Edwin Neal role, as though he had been that they gathered his corpse after being run over by the Black Maria truck at the end of the first movie, and had, like, his skull was fractured, so they put a plate in his head and then did whatever voodoo they had to reanimate him.
I mean, I didn't think of any voodoo.
What I thought
I just
it was.
assumed, like, he survived and they, put him back together with, like, scraps. So it's not the same. It's not the same character.
It is not at all. No, because literally, okay, when Bubba in the second movie first gets introduced, and he's got that corpse that, with like a black drape in front of him. Yeah. And I liked that. I liked the twist that it was no longer just a face, but now he was donning like a whole body. Mm-hmm. But it is Nubbins, the hitchhiker character. The only way you can tell is because he's wearing like some fatigues, and he's got like the little pouch, the little like raccoon skin pouch that he held like his pictures and his gunpowder and all that, and his knife and everything in. So that he's wearing that, and then I just felt like it was whatever it was. It felt like it was Leatherface doing something to try and get, like, one more for you. It could, for all I knew, it could have been his grandpa.
I just thought it was
like Grandpa will kill again.
Like an Egyptian.
So do I.
I didn't notice that he had the pouch. It was the hitchhiker.
It's character. Yeah. You have to look for it.
The thing with these movies, though, is just like every new movie, it's like there's more characters of this family, and it reminds me of Arrested Development, where there was like this one. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you seen that?
I do know what you're talking about.
It's just they keep showing the same scene in like multiple episodes, but every new episode they showed that there was like more people in the room when it happened, or it's just like Michael's going away party or whatever, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, but like Job was there, but we didn't know because he was like curled up behind the couch or something. So that was like it's like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Every time we like go back or reboot this franchise, it's just like, oh, but did you know that there was like 5 other family members in the other room that we didn't actually see? So right. So I assume, like, knowing that that's the hitchhiker is not the same as Chop Top, that it's just like, oh, it's another like he was out for the day, or he was digging up.
I think that because Chop Top is all about nom flashback, I'm getting the impression, because the first movie takes place in 1973. That was the last year before the U.S. exited Vietnam. So I feel like Chop Top must have been there up until the bitter end, and maybe like the last day of his service got, his head injury. They took him into, like their medical tent and gave him a plate in his head to keep him alive and just sent him home like that, which is also, okay, getting back into social commentary, making a commentary about like the state of the United States in that particular era that we were in 1986, because so we've got Drayton Sawyer, the old man, the cook, the oldest brother, going on about like independent business. I went like just all these topics. He talks about property taxes, the burden of sales when you're a small business, and about supporting his dependents who don't do anything, which is like I think a metaphor for for my generation and for 1980s youth, which are like bent on consumerism, but what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know, a star. And all of that baked in, and then also like this post-nom kind of like the way they treat like their military after the exit strategy. It's just kind of like, okay, we're going to go in, we're going to have you fight a war that we have no business fighting, and then when you come back, you're just going to go back to your life as you know it, and good luck, And that's why I think, as a form of protest, Chop Top is dressed as a hippie now, way after the fact, and I think the whole first movie, Chop Top, was probably just like in a medical tent somewhere. Okay. Like outside Saigon or something. I don't know.
I'm glad that you have your own headcanon for it.
Yeah, well, you have to. I've watched these movies so much. Yeah.
That's fair. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I just rebooted it with as much as the studio does every time there's a new one. Is there anything else you have to say about the second one before we, make our way through the 6 more movies here?
Yeah. I know it's like I've never talked about these movies like so briefly. There totally is. I have alternate titles. Let's just do that. Okay. Because who knows? Maybe we'll come back and I can like really delve into this in another pod one day. But I have alternate titles. Only 2 that I came up for this one, but that's appropriate because it's 2. Okay. The first one is Stretch is a Catch. Because they're trying to catch her, and it's kind of like an unofficial love story between her and Bubba. He's bringing her home to meet the family.
This was like the only time where we've seen Leatherface kind of like take one of his victims, as it were, and kind of like take a more like romantic interest in them, or like a protector, rather than just like flat out like, I'm gonna kill them, or take them back to the family to slaughter.
That's why that's my favorite sequence of him just dancing with her with a face on. It's just kind of like, I have a friend. That means you have to do what I do. And I fucking love everything about that sequence. And the other one is also kind of like, I don't know. It's a coming of age story for Bubba. So I thought I'd call it Hubba Hubba Bubba. What do you think?
No, it's great. And you have 2, so you made up for not having one in the first one. Okay, now I'm just going to make one up now because... that's what I do. Let's say like the I think it's something to do with chili. The big chili cook-off with people in it. That's my title. Use that one. We're going with that. Okay. Leatherface. Awesome. Texas Chainsaw 3. Okay. I just have to say that this, there's so many movies in this franchise that I hate, and I don't know if this is like the worst one for me, but this is definitely the most forgettable, because I actually had to rewatch this last night because I already watched all of them through this past month. And I couldn't remember this one. And even as I was watching it the last time, I couldn't remember watching it. And by the end of it, I fell asleep in the middle and had to rewind and watch more. And I just don't know what this is. This is a very plot-driven movie. It's just stuff happens. Yeah. And that's it. Yeah. There's nothing really to it. What I did notice is that there's a lot of homage-y kind of stuff in it with... the beginning feels like the opening of Night of the Living Dead, where you've got the couple in the car Although I know that like that was in Night of the Living Dead her brother. And these two, like, I guess they're boyfriend, girlfriend, but I get absolutely nothing from them in terms, like, they do not seem like a couple. All. Yeah. And then you have, psycho references with, like, the peephole.
Oh, with stuff.
So it just felt like they were taking ideas of just, like, all these other movies and just putting it in here to, like, and this is Texas Chainsaw. And
okay. Also, let's backtrack a bit more from the onset. Mm-hmm. We have already begun the retcon before we even see a character, where we find out. So Sally died 4 years after Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the first one. Yeah. W.E. Sawyer is mistaken for Leatherface and incarcerated, but we don't know who W.E. Sawyer is because there's no W or E in Drayton.
Well, I think it was supposed to be him because there's in the first movie the name of the stop, like the store, is called like W.E. Slaughter.
Okay, but this is the problem. They say W.E. is mistaken for Leatherface. We don't know who he is, and he died in the gas chamber in 1981. Mm-hmm. Drayton Sawyer was alive in 1986 to do Texas Chainsaw 2.
Yeah.
So W.E. is someone who's yet unclaimed. So we don't know who he is. And I'm like, it can't be Chop Top because he's in 2. So I don't know who he's supposed to be.
I just assumed that they were rebooting it again. It was like, it's almost like this. Well, this was the first reboot. So it goes, this is our second timeline. So the first timeline is Texas Chainsaw 1, Texas Chainsaw 2, and now this one is Texas Chainsaw 1, Texas Chainsaw 3.
It's 3 in the title, so why would it? No, I don't know. I don't buy it. Because also, I don't.
But there's also this movie introduces like 7 new family members. Like there's the little girl.
Well, okay, see, that's the thing. I feel like they would have us believe, maybe, because I don't believe they were smart enough to officially pull out, the first sequel and be like, we're the first sequel or whatever. I think it was sloppy. But I think if anybody was thinking anything, they were thinking, because it's said in the opening that like they believed that W.E. Sawyer was Leatherface, but they could never confirm it, and if he was Leatherface, then he was executed and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is officially over. But if he wasn't, the real Leatherface is still at large. And we see the real Leatherface is still at large. So it makes me think Bubba, or now he's named Junior, has escaped to another branch of the family, perhaps, where his mama is, and where all these other cousin brothers. I don't know. I mean, maybe there was some inbreeding. Edwin Neal said of the hitchhiker character.
Terrain. I mean, that might just be the filming location. Yeah. But they go it looks like they're actually in a desert for most of it, and then they're in a swamp. Like the family lives in a swamp.
But. Well, that's the thing. It's another branch of the family. It's another area of Texas, maybe, because the other reason why they can't completely take Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 out of the equation, Caroline Williams is in this movie. Did you know that?
No, I did. I found that out today because when I was watching it last night, there was the scene closer to the beginning where when they're first driving through, what's her, Michelle and
Ryan.
Yeah. And it does this shot where it like holds on a reporter. She doesn't say anything, but I just felt like that's very peculiar that they like would take the time to just like hold this shot on this person who is like more or less an extra. And then I was looking through the trivia on IMDb, and it's just like, Caroline Williams was brought back, and I guess like they canoned that it was her, and she now like became a reporter or something. It doesn't like look like her, like or at least like how she looked in part 2. But there's really like there's nothing in this movie. I mean, like Ken Foree is in it, and he's like a big deal. Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
And even with him, I was just kind of like, what is going? Like everything just felt like it was wasted here. Viggo Mortensen is like, I guess he's
Tex.
sort of like, I don't even know which counterpart part he would be to, you know, like the first two movies. Like, I don't see him as being like the Chop Top or Hitchhiker, because the gas station attendant, like, because he had that whole thing where he was basically like
Alfredo
recreate. Yeah. He's like, yeah, take a picture, like just doing the same thing. And I wanted to ask you about this, because like, was that his actual voice? Because the whole thing sounded like ADR, because it did not sync up with his mouth moving at any point in the movie. Like, they just got rid of this
that. I actually
voice.
Well, I mean, anytime they shoot outside, it's generally going to be ADR, because you pick up all the ambience noise and everything like that, and I don't know what their shooting conditions were. So maybe he ADR'd himself. I mean, it doesn't sound like the actor's actual speaking voice, but I think he's putting it on. But okay, let me just say about Alfredo here, because you're drawing a connection between him and the Hitchhiker, which I understand. But that said, this is the first installment, and this is what makes it kind of more excruciating for me. This is the first installment where we go full on misogyny. Like, I mean, it's misogynistic enough to abuse and batter and incapacitate a woman and threaten her repeatedly and call her a bitch to her face, and not even to her face, like to refer to her as a bitch, like to each other and everything like that. And that's all she is to you. That happened in the first two movies. But now we've got full-on threatened, vocalized assault, threats of assault, and about like, how I'm gonna make you naked, I'm gonna make you naked, I'm gonna show you a good time. This is a big. I mean, I can't. It's so gross. Like, not even what I loved about the first movie, and arguably the second movie too, is that we get these kind of backwoods people, but it doesn't feel, even at Part 2's most fantastical, I don't feel like I'm being shown anyone who couldn't conceivably exist in some shape or form. And I'm not saying Alfredo can't exist, but the fact that he does, with absolutely no redeemable qualities and no entertaining, he's not entertaining. I just think it's lazy, and I just think it's gross. And
and just the fact that
we're going to come to that
he's
again,
like
too.
The final, like, hurrah, I guess, or just like the ending of just like one of them had to, like, the killer has to come back, and it was him.
But do you know about the original ending?
No, lay it on me.
Okay. So it's on YouTube. You can watch it yourself if you so choose. So they're in the fucking swamp where Michelle is like just sitting there at, like, you know, the side of the pond where what's his name? I can't even remember these characters' names. Benny. When Benny is wrestling with Junior in the swamp and everything, and the chainsaw's going, and she's not even trying to go get it in either version. She's just sitting there going, "Come on, Benny, come on." I fucking hate when they make like their final girls do that, or any female character. It's like, come on, get in the water, grab the chainsaw, saw his head off, do something. Anyway, so she's watching, and the chainsaw's just going, yang, 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 yang. And Leatherface somehow kind of like leans Benny over the chainsaw blade, just so, and it starts to cut into his head. He's out. He's dead. Leatherface turns to her and grabs for her. She starts kicking his face, and that's when she runs outside the pond, and then all of a sudden somebody, I have no idea whether it's Tex or whether it's Tinker or whether it's Alfredo, because his face is all bloody, and I, like you, I've seen this movie probably about 4 times now. I can't remember anything really.
I'm surprised you even know like the names of these people.
I wrote them down. Yeah. So she's there, and she finds one of the bloody brothers, shall we say, or cousins, or whatever the fuck they are, and she like pushes him up against a tree, and lets go of a rig that looks like a bed spring, like a bare box spring that's only the springs in the metal. And it like kind of like, or maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it is a bed, I don't know, whatever it is. It just goes against him, kind of cuts him and pins him to the tree, and he dies. Then Leatherface is there. She grabs the rock and just starts beating him in the face, going like, "I'm sorry, little guy. I'm sorry, little guy," or whatever. And he dies. So she like kind of leans against a tree, slides down it. It always hurts my back because I just think, bark, ow. Yeah. And she's just walking out in, you know, like where kind of like the desert line meets the forest. like she's about to go into the woods, and there's a cop car the next day, like it's daylight.
Yeah.
There's a cop car driving up the road, and it just drives right by her, even though she's like, wait, and it drives maybe I'd say about 20 feet ahead of her, stops, and she's going, and then Jennifer Banco, the little girl who is just, she has no name, she's a little girl. Same girl from Friday the 13th Part 7, by the way, who played young Tina.
Young Tina.
Tina. She like kind of like just rises in the back seat, and she's got her little baby doll with her little skull, and she's just going and fucking I forgot her name already. Michelle is standing there, and she's just going and she's just going and the cop just starts to drive away. And then she's just left there, Michelle, laughing to herself, and that's the end of the movie. What the fuck? I mean, granted, the movie they came up with is completely... The ending that they did finally deliver in the theaters, where it's one guy after another, and one more threat of rape and everything like that. It's just so stupid. And
then there's that line, it's just like, there's a lot of roadkill in Texas, or...
Jesus.
Because that's
and that was the other thing.
To her.
Yeah. And that was another thing. They got another Texas line in the end of the original ending because there's a bumper sticker. Nobody says anything, but as the car's driving away, she sees the bumper sticker says, "Don't mess with Texas." That's the end of the... It doesn't help anything. I'm glad they changed it, I guess. It's still... I don't like this movie. It feels completely uninspired. I can't even talk about social commentary.
It's just...
I don't...
Yeah,
I mean...
It's just there to exist. And it's funny because this is produced by New Line, and from what I understand, they purchased the rights to it because they knew that they were winding down with the Nightmare on Elm Street series, so they wanted to kind of like continue with Texas Chainsaw Massacre after that, and it underperformed, so they just let it sit until like they lost the rights to it, or like it had run out. And then they just went on their merry way. So it was, they did try very hard, and that's what this movie is. It's basically, this might be my least favorite. It's hard to tell because I mean, it's not that there's anything in this movie that's just like so like fantastically bad that I just feel like fuck this movie. It's more just like it's such a waste of time. Like it's like you said, it is so uninspired. So,
yeah, I check out of this one a lot.
Yeah. Do you? I don't even want to talk about it anymore unless you have something profound to say about it.
I will say one thing, in case there's someone who's a champion of this movie, there's one thing that I thought was kind of interesting, and that was just, I guess, nailing her hands to the chair when they're binding her in the kitchen to stay with them. I was like, oh, that hasn't happened yet.
I mean, as it was happening, like she was like, did that like, oh, but afterwards she's just like, why are you doing this? I'm just like, did you just lose like all sensation in your hands like after he finished nailing it, that you're not even like emoting pain at this point anymore?
Yeah,
I don't know.
She's a final girl by default, if ever there was one.
And also, like, Ken Ford, like, at that point, he, like, comes in and he just starts shooting at the house. Like, all I was thinking is, like, you might hit her. Do you even know she's in there?
Yeah, right?
Because he basically killed all of them at that point.
Yeah.
Other than, I guess, Tex and the little girl who's just...
Right.
Left there. And she had like the light system. Is that another like...
She was the most interesting character that they introduced, and we spent so little time with her. She doesn't even get a name. I was like, show me how a child gets raised in a terrain like this. Like you can... And also it's called Leatherface, and Leatherface is such an afterthought. The only thing we get new like kind of like development is that like, well, apparently he sprouted antlers in the second movie, and he's just took that ball and ran with it because he's got a little girl now. The little girl's his daughter. And he likes, the mom is telling Michelle in the kitchen, he lacks the lady parts or whatever the line is. And I'm just like, yeah, I never needed that.
Okay.
I mean, the second movie managed to bring out a kind of sexuality to Leatherface without ever grossing me out. So props to them for that. The third movie, no. The third movie kind of revels in being gross and, kind of like, I don't know, doing, I guess, what they felt Tobe Hooper wasn't bold enough to do, but it just makes it so boring and unpalatable.
I'm gonna make an alternate title. I'm just gonna call this one
Go for
Roadkill. That's the only thing I associate with this. It's just roadkill. You can toss it out on the side of the road.
Absolutely. I have two. One is Long Day's Journey into Fight. And
you're really, really the thing that
I had some time with this movie in particular. But the other one actually is not that witty. It's just the question I kept asking myself the whole time I was watching it again, just going, "Where's Stretch?" That's what the movie should be called. Where the fuck is Stretch? Bring her back, because I would have... Same thing. Amy Steele in Friday the 13th Part 3. Yeah. I would have loved it to see... And same thing with Stretch. Give me someone who has a history with the family now, who can carry on the franchise at least one more movie. But and she was available, obviously, so piss me off. Anyway, I'm done.
Okay. Chapter 4.
Yes.
I think you have like a very good understanding of this movie. All I'm gonna say is like this might have been the second one that I saw, because I remember seeing the video cover for it, and it was interesting because the video cover, I think it had it didn't have a back cover on it. It was just like a reverse front cover. So the cover on the VHS was like the lipstick chainsaw. And on the back, it was the one where it's like Leatherface and drag, and it was just like if looks can kill. And all I saw, remember, is it said Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey, and I was just like, I want to rent this. I need to, I worked in a video store, so it was just like I had kept seeing that one. I'm like, I'm gonna watch this, and just being like, what the hell is this?
Yeah,
it was funny. I mean, if anything, this is the funny, this is the funny one. And I mean, at the time, it was definitely this is the one that I probably would have been this is the worst movie. And even if you look on IMDb or anything, it's rated a 3 point something, very low. But I mean, in
calm down, everybody.
With newer movies, I'm just I would much rather watch this one, to be honest. This is, I mean, that's kind of just what my feelings about this franchise are. Whereas a movie like this is probably middling rather than at the very end for me. You can just kind of base, just know where I have my opinion of where everything sits. So.
Well, can I say I no longer watch this franchise in chronological order because it depresses me, to be honest. So I ranked them some time ago, and that's how I watched them. I watched them in my ranking order from worst to best. So I always had something to look forward to. Well, kind of. It was rocky in the beginning, but I knew I just have to get through it, and then, but what was I going to say? Okay, but first introduction, because you mentioned earlier about kind of knowing about this as a franchise. I saw the first movie not knowing there were any sequels. I didn't start watching the sequels and didn't have any knowledge of them until I was doing a play in 2003, I want to say, right around the time the reboot was coming out, but I think it was still pre-reboot. And it was a small town called Sonora that had a drive-through Starbucks and a video store, and that's it, and our theater company. So I stayed in a Winnebago on my own in the middle of nowhere, and I just went to the Blockbuster and rented. I saw they had the family portrait documentary where they interview the family from the first movie. And then I saw, and it was on VHS. Then I saw, oh my God, there's a second movie. I watched that, liked it. Saw the third movie. Then I saw this movie, and I was so confused by this point. I was already confused before, but by this point I was like, is this a remake? Because it's the next generation, and it seems to be following a lot of the same story points of the first one, even more so than the last two sequels. But I couldn't make heads or tails of it. I didn't understand what was going on, so I just watched it. And I had a good time with it. I do have to say, this time they retcon a bunch of stuff also. Apparently none of the family was ever apprehended in this particular chapter, yet it's not a separate timeline because they make mention in the opening of only two minor incidents that followed the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which tells me those are the two movies, because two people survived from each one of those situations.
I love that they're minor incidents as well, the authorities took it seriously. She had holes in her hands. from the last one. Like, no big deal.
And also, I think Stretch did pretty well. I think she did better than Sally did, like at the end of her story, but she still probably needed a day to just stop shaking. Anyway,
Just a day,
this movie, I think I knew what I was in for when we got to the scene very, very early when we're still at the party.
At the prom.
There's the prom, but there's some party girl, if that's her, I don't even know what she's credited as, doing her own kind of one-woman show about Mrs. Abbott giving Heather some grief. And then Heather just kind of like moves away from her. And the girl's just kind of like going, she's doing it again. And I wrote it down, all of her lines. Miss Abbott, she does that to make trouble, okay? It's obvious. It is so obvious. Don't even listen to a word she says. It's just like, and all that. It's just that she's such a bitch. And then we never see the character ever again. And I'm not complaining because she's a terrible actress. I'm sorry. I don't like to say that about anybody.
There are no good actors in this movie. I mean, obviously,
no.
Renee and Matthew went on to prove themselves, but it's.
I'm gonna fight you on that.
You can fight me all you want. But okay, so like I guess like I don't even know the characters' names. I don't know their relationships to one another. But I guess like Renee's date. I don't even know Renee's name in this. But
Jenny. She's Jenny.
Jenny's date to the prom, who they like say, oh,
is Sean.
Because the one guy's like, we both know that you're not even like together. You're just like hooking up to get weed.
Barry says that, yeah.
But they were like making out in the backseat when they were like drove away, and like all of a sudden like you have these two heads pop up, like what's going on? But the date, Sean or whatever, because he's the first to die, or at least like the first of that group to die after like the guy on the side of the road, which I don't even know what
the random guy.
The random guy.
Me neither.
But when Sean is his name, is kind of like running away from Matthew McConaughey. And what's his name in this?
Oh, he's Vilmer.
Yeah, so Vilmer, he's driving the pickup truck, and he's just kind of like going after this guy, and Sean runs maybe like 30 seconds, and he's out of breath. He's completely winded, and he's just like, please, mister, stop doing this. And it's just like, do you have any will to survive? Like, right, he's in a fucking truck. He has this like gibbled leg that needs like this mechanical thing to move him. Go off the road, go run into the woods, because he ain't gonna follow you in there with a truck, and he's not gonna like be able to keep up with you on foot. So I already hate this character, and I'm just like
that's why he dies.
He was not realistic in any way. That's why I think like he had no will to survive.
But see, I didn't expect any realism after I saw that party girl come out and give her performance, and I was just kind of like, oh shit.
I mean,
everything's going to be better than that.
It's not
and
that
it was
realistic or not, but it's frustrating because it's just like, why are you being like this?
Well, okay. Because also, I have to say, in addition to, I think Renee Zellweger does like a pretty good job. It's interesting because she varies. There are moments where I feel like she's incredibly connected and doing something that feels like, okay, awesome, I totally buy it. And then the rest of the time she's just kind of like breathing and like just exhaling her lines. And I don't mind it. And Matthew McConaughey chewing up the scenery, I love it. But I'm particularly fond of the all right. Yes, he does.
Just throwing it. It was like his trademark thing, and now it's like he has to say that in every
movie.
It's like Owen Wilson and
absolutely.
Wow. You know?
Yeah, right. But so my MVP of this movie though is an actress named Lisa Newmeyer. She's the one who plays Heather, the other girl who's at the prom with Jenny. Because the lines that this girl delivers, she's doing. I feel like if she were doing a one-woman show, I would go in a heartbeat. Because, and also she does. She essentially does. They keep giving her speeches, and I don't really know why they're there, except that they make me live. I just love her sitting there just going like, wait. I just thought of something so cool. What if we got into a wreck and we crashed into a car in front of us and we all died? And they could write a song about it. And then after they hit the guy in the car, she just comes out with the flattest, most mild of interests, just kind of, or concern, just kind of like, is he dead? Did he die? Something bad's going to happen. I can feel it. He's going to die. Look at him. It's my fault. If he dies, I'll be a murderer. And then they all start to leave. And she's like, I'm not staying here alone. What if he dies? And I kept writing down her lines. And these are speeches. Like, she'll just go like, stop, I heard something. I had these dreams about some weirdo following me through the woods, and it's coming true. I'm sorry.
I agree with you.
She's obsessed with death. I love her.
She's probably a Scorpio. But I was going to say her and is it Barry? Like, whoever her, like,
Barry,
philandering boyfriend are. They're the most interesting part because they're so ridiculous. And like their banter is just like, oh shit. You know, like I wish like the whole movie was just them. Like he was killed off way too soon.
Yeah, I agree with you there, but we still get quite a bit of him, but also I feel like as much as I love what Renee's doing, I don't ever really get tired of her being on screen either. But I am sad that, even though they keep bringing her back, Heather keeps being taken out of the equation. Well, just when you think she's dead and she's done for, they bring her back and torture her some more.
Yeah,
I miss
she gets
her voice.
like 5 different deaths in this movie. Like they overkill Heather for sure. One more character I just want to reference the Darla.
Yeah.
Okay, so just explain like who are these people? Like obviously there's no continuity here, but it's almost like, because I think Grandpa's in this. We see Grandpa.
Yeah, we do. Played
even
by
though he got shot, like he was
actor.
one of the people that got shot in the third one.
Yeah, he expired, I guess, in the third movie, and now he's fully reanimated. Like he's just an actor painted gray, basically.
Well, I love the point where he's so like tired of the whatever.
He just gets up and leaves.
Yeah, he's just like, okay, I'm going to my room.
Okay. So
I didn't even know that was an actor. I thought it was just like a dummy.
Oh, it's an act. No, yeah,
no.
Totally
I know that now, but I mean, like in the scene, he's completely still, not doing anything, and then just like all of a sudden, like, I'm going upstairs.
I felt like all the corpses were so easily recognizable as like actual people they just painted gray who just sat there like that. From the first one we see is the sheriff or the cop. I don't know if he's a sheriff. When Renee Zellweger, when Jenny runs up the stairs, and usually she would encounter Grandpa and Grandma just sitting there with some stuffed animals around them. But no, it's a cop, and she takes his gun and whatever. But okay.
Before you go on to that last thought, I'm gonna say like if you have anything like else you want to get out about this movie, let's do that because we are running short on time here and we're only halfway through, so we'll have to speed through the rest of the franchise.
I have so much more I could say about this movie. Maybe we'll do a pod again.
Maybe.
But I'll just answer your question. Who are they? Essentially, these are like backwoods people who were recruited by the Illuminati or an Illuminati-like group that is beyond the government to essentially, I guess, reap chaos and create horror. Because that's what the most deplorable character, I feel, Rothman, the businessman who comes in with the earrings on his belly and the weird branding that he did to himself and then licking Renee's face. Everything about the dialogue that he has with them suggests that these people were all hired to basically live out here and inspire horror in the minds and lives and hearts of people. So because we are playthings to them, they essentially see themselves as gods, and they like kind of like the way Greek gods like to inflict tragedy on civilians, earth dwellers, and mortals, and just watch us suffer for their entertainment. I think that's what this guy Rothman is doing with every one of those cars that gets. So he drives a tow truck, and I don't know if you noticed, but like in the dinner scene, I think it's on the wall. I don't remember who it's behind, but there's a wall of keys. Yeah. And they're all hung on individual nails to suggest that Vilmer has towed all of those cars. So anyway, so that's who they are. And I just feel like ultimately, without going into it too much, I feel like this movie is a meta commentary on the state of the franchise and on horror in general at this particular state, because it's the mid-90s. Because the most notorious titles in horror up until this point were like winding down. And he even, Rothman even makes that comment at the very end when he picks up Jenny is it a limo? I don't even remember. Yeah. But he just tells her, it was supposed to be something great. It was supposed to be this. It was supposed to be. And it says, perhaps it's disappointment that keeps us going. And Kim Henkel, the producer of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the second one, wrote and directed this one. And I feel like what he's doing is basically commenting on the franchise and just like, you know what? It's morphed into something else that it probably shouldn't have, and that's what is manifesting. Like, the franchise has literally become disorganized chaos as opposed to the organized chaos of the first movie, where brand new characters are popping up and we have no idea where we are, and and what's the point at the end of the day? The point at the end of the day is someone tried to create something beautiful, or something meaningful, and maybe they failed, or maybe they're just disappointed with what they created. But you got to keep going. You just got to keep going. That's what I get from this movie.
Yeah, and it didn't get any more tidier. I can tell you that.
Oh god.
What's your alternate?
Yes, my alternate titles. Yeah. Hold on, let me go back because I wrote quite a few notes on this one.
Just one. Just give us one.
Alternate. I got 3. It's a mad.
Give us one.
You just interrupted me. I could have been done by now. It's a mad conspiracy. It's trap Italyism. And my favorite, Illuminati. There you go.
Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah.
Moving on.
You really, you put a lot of effort into this. I was just going to say...
Yes, I
did. Prom night.
Prom night.
Yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Darla's
Prom
first...
night.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah,
and
just
said.
Darla's
first line. She's like,
in the franchise.
Prom night.
All right, now we're into 2003. We've got the remake, and I know that based on previous conversations, you are not a fan.
I was, and now I'm. It's fine.
Yeah.
This will be.
Do you want me to like say what I gotta say, and then we'll let you say your thing? I think that okay. Here's the thing. Like this is kind of like the first big remake of the time. Like we had remakes before. We had House on Haunted Hill. We had 13 Ghosts. So just of like the more contemporary stuff. Obviously, we had remakes previous to this, like, you know, Night of the Living Dead in 1990, and The Blob and stuff like that. But I feel like this was like really like the first highbrow, or not even highbrow, but just like Hollywood like A-list sort of thing, because it was like Platinum Dunes coming in there, and it's just like we're gonna like make a very serious like Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, and it's gonna be a big thing. And I like this movie. I think it's good. There's nothing about this that I watch this over and just be like, oh, like I can't stand this movie. It definitely, like, I didn't think it was going to be good going into it when I first saw it, just based on like everything that had come before it. At that point, like, just because the remake trend hadn't really picked up, that I didn't know what they were doing. But I think that just in terms of them taking the story and doing it over again, they captured the tone of what I would have like you know, what I see in the original movie of just like how you know, maybe like that experience feels, and I think that they perfectly brought that to the forefront of this 2003 outing. So in that regard, I like this movie. I mean, it does you know, drag a little bit in parts. Like it just feels like it meanders you know, in the last third maybe. But other than that, like, I'd much rather, just in terms of comparing this to like other remakes of the time, I would much rather watch this one. So I have a pretty favorable opinion of it, just in terms of like where it sits in this franchise. Like it's probably like second or third for me.
Okay. Mine, it's a little lower for me, but I can acknowledge now with enough like perspective that even though it did kind of kick off that like, look at this grisly reboot, you know, kind of thing that was happening, I saw it in the theater and I walked away kind of going like, well, I felt like it did the franchise a service, you know, like it uplifted a bunch of stuff. It had the same director of photography as the original one, Daniel Pearl. And I think you can see that in certain shots, but at the same time, he had also been doing cinematography for music videos by and large ever since the first movie. And I think you can feel that when you watch the reboot, because one thing that it does have that I don't feel like is necessarily in its favor. I mean, it looks produced. that can be a good thing. Like, it looks like a real movie, but it also looks like the set is dressed. It's weathered. It's, there's an intention set to like create these shafts of light and everything. And it looks a little too staged for me to actually kind of like really inspire the gritty realism I think I was responding to when I first saw it. I think it is gritty. It is not real. I feel like it is, I don't know, just a little too pretty in a weird way. But that doesn't make me hate it. It just makes me think like, that's not what Texas Chainsaw Massacre was ever really about for me. Even effective shots that feel very mindfully put together, you still get a sense of authenticity. And this also, just because of like the amount of backstory we get and the amount of kind of context we're given as to like who these kids are and where they're going and what their relationships are defined perfectly. If that's the kind of movie that a person is going to respond to positively, I'm not going to begrudge them that. But it takes out the mystery and it takes out that wonderful kind of eavesdropping feeling that I get when I'm like just in a van with a bunch of people. Mm-hmm. Only other thing I guess I can say. Yeah.
No. I just on the heels of that, I do want to say, because that kind of, this really did become a template for all the remakes that kind of had that glossy look. And, we've commented on that about Scream 4, in other conversations we've had, because yes. the cinematography and just like the overall look of that movie is so jarring from everything that came before it in the first three movies, that this... you said was Wes Craven's attempt to kind of recreate the look of remakes at the time. So I think that's interesting that you say that, because this like Texas Chainsaw Massacre really did put into motion of like how Dawn of the Dead, Black Christmas, just like any remake, Halloween even, like that came after this, is just like, we're gonna like make it look in a way like almost like pretty, but also like fake gritty, like it's like it has a gritty look, but it looks like a produced, like really beautiful like look, where like in Scream 4, where everything is so glossy and not appealing to look at actually. But
and last things I have to say about it are basically let's just take Leatherface.
We're now the Hewitts, the family is no longer Sawyer.
Yeah, now the family no longer Sawyer. Okay. This is my problem with it, because I am terrified of Leatherface, and Gunnar Hansen is and will forever be my Leatherface, for reasons I've already spelled out. What I don't like that this one does is, first of all, even though I like the fact that the hitchhiker is a victim this time, that's kind of cool. But the fact that she's sitting there like muttering to herself, he's a bad man. He's a bad man. And I remember the first time I saw it, I thought she's talking about Leatherface. Oh my God, this is going to be so terrible. No, I am convinced now that because she pulls a gun out of her cooch, and because Sheriff Hoyt comes over and takes it, and when he discovers the body and puts it back in like a holster, and it's a total Hoyt move, it feels, to torture a pretty young girl, like, to the point where she's like muttering to herself in the back of a van. And even to like leave his gun there, if you know what I mean. It just, you lose something for me when Leatherface is kind of like the least terrifying character in that house. Because I feel like when Sally is going, she's going because of what accumulatively happened to her from all of them. But Leatherface is the one who's probably going to like haunt her nightmares predominantly from then on, undoubtedly. I don't get that feeling from this particular Leatherface. Also because, very much like we're talking about it being staged and being fakey and everything like that, the face doesn't look like real skin to me. It looks like it was made in a shop, and like it's, rubber and latex, and that, like that the actor had to take it off and breathe every now and then. And the fact that he's also... Even though they give one shot of him like kind of cowering behind a door, the rest of the movie, he's this big, imposing force. And that's not my Leatherface. My Leatherface is a victim himself. And that's what's so terrifying. So all that bothers me, I think, the most. I did want to ask you one question, just because this is kind of a tell for me with a lot of fans. How do you feel about the Kemper face mask reveal when Jessica Biel's in the car, Aaron, and she sees Kemper's
No, I know what you're
face
talking about. Yeah, I hate it. It's like one of my least favorite masks, because it looks so goofy. And I mean, I know that like Leatherface works fast. He's very proficient at making these masks and making them quickly, as we've seen previously and we'll see again in future installments. But I don't know. It's just like just seeing it's just like the expression on the face and like, I find it much scarier when it's like, when there isn't like a distinctness to the face that he's wearing. It's just like it's almost like it's more of his identity, whereas this, I'm just looking at it, just like, oh, look at that, he's wearing the boyfriend's face. So okay, cool. That was something that, like, even seeing it in the theater the first time, it was like took me out of it a little, and I know what they were trying to go for, to like this horrifying reveal, but it didn't have that effect on me.
See, I love asking that question because it's like a blue dress, gold dress moment for me, where people are either like, oh my God, that was so chilling. What a horrible way to find out that your lover is dead. But, and I was actually in that camp. I'm still kind of like creeped out about it, just about like Eric Balfour's face with other eyes looking out. It's just kind of scary because I love Eric Balfour. But other people feel the same way you do. I had a cousin who was the first one to lower the boom on me and just kind of go like, that was so stupid. Like, there's a reason they waited this long in the franchise to make a move like that, because it's completely implausible and stupid and just, you wouldn't recognize his face. And it just went into a whole diatribe, and I was like, wow, you really feel strongly about this. And most people have a strong opinion about that moment, so that's why I wanted to ask you.
One thing I do want to say about the movies, I like the way that it was framed, kind of like a documentary, even though we only see that at the beginning and the end. But I thought that was clever. Like, I appreciated that aspect of it. I've just sort of like, because it was sort of going with like the popularity of the found footage thing, which, I mean, at that point was only really like Blair Witch Project. But I still I liked it how they sort of kind of worked it in there, and not that I would ever want to see like a Blair Witch or like a found footage Texas Chainsaw, because I mean that would just be annoying. But I at least like the fact that it was sort of like this thing in like the annals of like American crime of back at like this time, like something happened and the police went down there to investigate and they were attacked, and this is the only known surviving footage of that incident. Like that was a little creepy, so I liked that about it.
And they brought John Larroquette back to narrate.
And sorry, who?
Go on. John Larroquette, because he did the original narration in the opening of the first movie, where he's reading that scroll, and they brought him back to read the scroll for this one. That I kind of appreciate. Things like that, I was like, okay, this was mindful. So I don't hate it, but I'm not like go nuts about it. I have alternate titles if you want to hear them.
Why did you pick so many? Okay, just go on.
Because that was the assignment.
It was really one. It was one title, and you didn't even pick one for the first movie, so it's
Because it's perfectly titled. Everybody drools, because that's all anybody does in that sequence where Hoyt is like holding the gun at Morgan's, or making Morgan hold the gun, and they're in the dirt, and everybody's just drooling. Anyway, misspent youth, just because it's something that Aaron says in the movie. Hillbilly horror hoedown, and the last one, slippery cellar psycho situation, because that cellar is damp, and I don't know why. Why is it so wet down there?
Yeah.
Damp and dank.
I'm just going to call this one Sweet Home Texas, because the trailers, and I think it's even in the movie, they're playing like Sweet Home Alabama. And it's just like, why are you playing a song that has a completely different state in the title to like correlate with this movie? So I'm going to change that and call it Sweet Home Texas.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. The beginning. The beginning. And I agree. I think that this is kind of the point where, I mean, I'd say like out of everything that we've talked about before, like the third, like Leatherface 3 was the worst one of that. This is the point in the franchise where it just kind of goes off the rails for me, and it just gets progressively, I don't know if like worse or worse, because I still haven't like figured that out with the back half here. But my problem with this movie is that, okay, first of all, origin story. And it's like, I don't know what was the obsession with doing prequels at this time, where it's just like, nobody wants to go back. Like, there's nothing in this movie where things happen, and it's just like, I wasn't like, oh, so that's, like, explains that. And, like, I never had these questions. That wasn't important to me. But the thing that really kills me with this movie, or, like, really kills this movie for me, is just like how bleak it all is. Like, there's still, even like the the previous movies, even Leatherface 3, like to a certain extent, there's a level of fun to it. Like, not so much with that third one, but like all the other ones, there's like fun. This movie is not fun at all. Like there's not a single moment here where I'm just like enjoying the experience. It's excruciating. I don't know like what the point of it at all is. I just feel like they're, you know, kind of just doing the same things with like the 2003 movie, just, you know, creating that same atmosphere, but just in a, like, it just feels cheaper.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to echo everything that you just said, basically, because ultimately, you're right. It answered all the questions I never had about the reboot, and also it does such a lazy job at answering these questions. Like, well, how did Leatherface find his chainsaw? He found it. And how did Hoyt become, you know, sheriff? He killed the sheriff, and you know, I mean, it's like, okay, and then one more. How did Uncle Monty, I guess the amputee, the double legs, amputee from the first movie, how did he lose his legs? Leatherface cut them off for no reason. Ooh, I mean, there is nothing. I don't care. And also, at least this I will say about the reboot, I feel like there were levels, like there was, not necessarily, I wouldn't call it fun necessarily, but I mean, they had some quips and they had some exchanges, and it felt like there were peaks and valleys, and I can appreciate that. This movie, I feel like I'm continually inundated by the cinematography and the score. Really, anytime we're with the Hewitts, there is like this score going on that, it's from the same person who did the reboot, and I wrote his name down somewhere, I don't remember where, but, I don't think it's his fault, but just the placement of it. Every time we are with the Hewitts, it's like, shing, whoa, whoa, whoa. Literally, Sheriff Hoyt is hosing off the brothers, and it's treated with like the same grandiose, like kind of like, horror, look at what he's doing, as like any of the kills. And it's nothing, and there's no rest, and it just feels so artlessly thrown together. Also, for me, I've said this many times before, and I'll say it many times from here on out on this podcast, that just my opinion, anguish does not equal horror. And I wrote something else too. I had enough time to write it. And just because it's hard to watch as an audience member doesn't mean that the filmmakers did their job. Like, I agree with you. I feel like it's grueling. I feel like it's just a lot of mental anguish and torture, and not done in a way that is ever kind of like concerned with the audience's threshold. You know, like at a certain point, the problem is when you're continually inundated without any kind of relief. I'm not asking for relief because like, I need relief, but I need it just to actually feel what it is you're going for. You can't just if you keep pummeling me, eventually I'm not going to feel it anymore. So that's how I feel about this movie.
It's just a very cynical movie altogether. And, you know, even the end where I get like the twist that she doesn't make it out, which I mean, like, I guess like you could assume that since like the first movie takes place so many years later and they're still doing what they're doing, that like nobody survived to get out of it. So it just felt like they were going more for shock value of just like, oh, she's gonna get away, and then just like, no, he was in the back seat. So that felt stupid. The only thing that I will point out of not even a positive, is just more of a statement, is that Matt Bomer is in this. He's playing, I guess, is it Eric? Is that the character's name?
I wrote it down, maybe.
It doesn't even matter.
I don't think I wrote down names for this.
Names
it
don't
does
matter.
Not matter.
But yeah, it was Matt Bomer.
No.
And then, of course, Jordana Brewster was...
yes.
Chrissy? I'm pretty sure that was what it was.
I don't care.
Anyway, yeah. We got that. But yeah, this movie is it's definitely in the back half, like, you know, it's lower.
Yeah.
If
even Matt Bomer's beard, it's just like patchy, and
it didn't look like him. I didn't recognize him at first. I had to I'm like, oh, holy shit, that's
I mean, it's not a knock on him. He's fine. Oh, and one thing I did want to say, I would really like to see, if anybody wants to put this together and send it to me, by all means, Edward is Truth on Instagram. I would really like to see Uncle Monty's leg amputation scene re-edited with a comedic score and a laugh track, because I was like, this is fucking funny, but they're not playing it for laughs. They're trying to like, oh, look how fucking big my dick is. The movie, like, just, yeah, look at it. And I'm not I don't care. I've seen it. I don't need to look at it anymore. But if it were done with like a laugh track and like I think it would help something.
Could you imagine like just any of these movies, like just take it out and like put like the little Seinfeld like I
would love it. There's a way to do it. There's an art to that too. I have alternate titles if you'd like to hear them because I don't really have anything else to say about this movie.
Sure.
Okay, first one I thought of was Sheriff Hoyt Rising. Oh, because that's another thing. It's supposed to be this like origin story, and yet it feels like I'm centering on him more than anybody else. So there's that. Oh, also didn't mention in the reboot they renamed him. The mom in the reboot at one point called him Junior. So now he's Junior instead of Leatherface because Leatherface is Tom. So more name swapping. So at least that ball is still going. And the other title I came up with was Vietnam Was Easier Than This. So.
I was trying to think. I was gonna say something to do with Vietnam, but
sorry.
No, that's okay. Let's just say backseat drivers.
Nice. I like it.
Before we get into the next one, I want to ask you a question. Is there any point in this franchise where they do call him Leatherface?
Oh, in the first movie, yeah.
They call him Leatherface in the first movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they call him Leatherface. Both the hitchhiker and the old man call him Leatherface. When they get into the house, like after he does that incredible scene, like with the dust, it looks like smoke, but it's dirt, like in the headlights, and he's beating Edwin Neal, and then they get back, and he's just like, "Look what your brother did to the door! Hey, Leatherface, come my way!" They call him Leatherface. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it happens.
So now we're on to 3D.
Yes.
And oh god, fuck.
Go for it.
To me, this is like the Halloween resurrection of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise.
Hateful. Go on.
I don't know. Like, you can try to defend this. I'm not gonna really like go too much into like the timeline discrepancy. Because obviously, as we know, like they did not do their homework with this one in terms of just like figuring out the passage of time throughout the years of where our characters would be, especially like just considering the present day technology that the people are using with their phones and stuff. Like, clearly like this is 40 years, yet your main character is in her 20s. But I don't know, like for me, I guess it was stupid. It was just so stupid. And you could tell like they put like little things in there. Like obviously they did bring back Gunnar Hansen, and you had Marilyn Burns in these little like thankless cameos, and they were doing like they're like the passcode to get into the gate is 08 whatever, like
19.
919, just because it was like, and he's like, if you need to remember it, just think of it like a date, August 19th, which is like on August 19th, blah blah blah.
The morning, it was the final morning, yeah.
So it's I don't know. It seemed like they were putting the effort in, but they just, maybe it was like the time it came out, they were still like doing stupid shit. So, but just being like 3D technology and all that, and just, one thing I will say, though, that, maybe keeps this movie from not being at the very bottom for me, because this is so stupid, is just the fact that it kind of starts off like you'd expect it to be, the typical, like, we're going on a road trip, and from where it starts off to where it goes is completely different. So it does subvert expectations a little bit in that regard, but I just, like, everything within this movie is so stupid that I hate it. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Because I saw it in the theater. That January release. I did not know it was a direct sequel to the original, basically. I mean, in terms of, like, it opens with the footage of the original movie. I was just kind of like, wait, what's going on? And then I feel like I knew exactly what I was in for when we found ourselves in the first movie house with all this family that was not present at all in the first movie. And I'm like, so you retconned or not even retconned, like completely removed the existence of like all of these sequels potentially. And you you're making a mistake right out of the gate by just throwing a population of Sawyers in this house. Gunnar Hansen is not Leatherface. Bill Moseley is playing the cook. What is happening? And from then on, I was just kind of like, oh, this is going to be batshit. So I think because I took that and watched it the rest of the movie through that lens, every time there was some kind of inconsistency or stupid mistake or a seeming oversight, I will just laughed. Because you're right. Verna Sawyer actually, her tombstone reads that she died in 2012. So it is absolutely confirmed that this is happening, some four decades after the original movie. Yet Alexandra Daddario was 26 years old when they were shooting it in 2012. So, okay, so there's that. But I don't know. There's so much. Okay, I just wrote, I love the moody shot of Verna's reflection as Heather, another Heather for the franchise, is looking at the photo of her, and she's sharing the reflection, and it's like this ghoulish kind of like, come, be a Sawyer. It is so cheesy. I love Verna's, we don't know it yet, I guess it's her unearthed body, because now Jed has unearthed her body from the coffin, which is where Heather hides later, and brought the body up, but we think maybe it's a ghost, or I don't know what the fuck we're supposed to think it is. I love that Leatherface scares away a saw pig at the fucking carnival. Just kind of like, this is a real massacre. This is a real saw. We owned the saw first. I love that. I love that he can throw a chainsaw at the screen and vanish. And when that happened in 3D, I have a chainsaw thing too. I don't like them. So when the chainsaw came at me off screen, I screamed out loud, louder than I have probably in any theater ever. For a long time, like, ah! One of those screams. And then, but I love that he's just kind of gone. He's this giant man, and now he's gone. I love that Heather is left alone with a literal box of backstory, immediately shifting her allegiance back to the Sawyers. And she writes, I guess in lipstick, murderer.
I thought it was like, it was really annoying that they had this thing at the beginning where the guy who was handling the estate was like, here's this letter, you need to... all the information is in there. So what does she do right away? She puts the letter aside and doesn't fucking look at it until later. Yeah. So it's just like, it was one of those things where it's just like, we're going to purposefully like allow this movie to happen when it didn't need to. So it just, that pissed me off. But yeah, please continue.
I have so much more I could say, but I'm not going to, because I'm going to take up too much time. I'm just going to say I have an absolutely visceral reaction to watching Leatherface get fucking hate crimed. Like, I am not happy. I'm not a happy camper, because like I said before, he's a victim. It's not his fault that he is the way he is, or that he does the things he does. It's because of the environment in which he was raised, I believe. Because I do believe there's a struggle in him, and a conflict, and a loyalty to his family. So when I see him robbed of all of that and then just beat up by these people who are horrible, it really bothered me in a good way, in a cinematic way.
The interesting thing about this movie is that it kind of makes him the good guy. Like, it makes the Sawyers the good guys here. So that's interesting. There's definitely a social commentary on that end. But I don't know. I still think that this is the Halloween resurrection of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because the entire time I was watching this, all I could think of was like, I could be watching Halloween Resurrection right now. And that is not something that I often think about. I like to avoid.
Well, maybe that has
to.
Right, but maybe that has to do with your affinity for Michael Myers or something. Even though he looks silly, but because this is the thing about like Leatherface. Also, like, I mean, I cry in this movie. I cry when he comes back. Like he and Alexandra Daddario are like walking back. Not together, because they're still. They're just like putting things together. But I see an old, tired, in pain and vulnerable Jed now walk into the kitchen and just sit down. Oh, I might cry. But I just seeing this old man who has never known any better than doing what he does, and he's just looking, and the actor who plays him is Dan Yeager, who plays Leatherface in this movie. He's just looking at Alexandra Daddario, Heather, and you just can see this one eye and it's glistening. It's like welling up as he looks at her with such vulnerability, and she's looking at him and her eyes are welling up too, because I don't think either of them do a bad job playing these parts either. But at that particular moment, I'm watching a character who has never really experienced on screen true affection from anybody, or or where his vulnerability has even really kind of like been welcomed, except arguably Stretch, but she's really just trying to manipulate him and get out. But so just to see him actually share a tender moment with someone who he now knows as family, and that flips the switch, and now I have to protect you. I tried to kill you so much, sorry. But it still moves me just to see this character that I'm terrified of in a moment of absolute disarmament. And then immediately when she tries to like touch him, he grabs the hand and is just kind of like, there's a line, like, we're family. I'm not ready for this kind of affection, and then he leaves. And
I don't know. I did not interpret any of that.
I loved
way.
it.
I just saw more of like, he was like this lost puppy dog, and it was like, Verna had taken care of him for as long as she could, and then it was sort of like, you need to take care of me now. So he was just kind of like, where do we go from here? And then like she was going to take on that role. That's kind of all I got out of it. But
it totally works on me.
Anyway.
On me. And I cried again last night. Yeah.
Oh, God. Alternate titles?
Yeah. Alternate titles. I have SJS, Social Justice Sawyer. I've also got Highfalutin Hypocrisy House Party. And my favorite, Night of the Living Jed.
I was going to call it My Cousin Levy.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say. I could say again. I could do a whole pod on this movie alone. Do you think, Cuz? Yeah, it's cute. I could say so much more about this movie,
I'm
but
sure
I'm not
you
going
could. But, okay, so let's get to the last frickin' movie here with Leatherface. I don't really have much to say. I'm just okay. This does not feel like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie to me at all. I would have much preferred if we didn't need another origin story. Like, I thought that was stupid. If they were gonna go with the whole thing with Heather now being his caretaker, I would have rather seen like the continuation of that and where it went, because there was a lot of unfinished business in that 3D movie. Not that I ever needed to see a continuation of that, but if they were going to make a movie connected to that, like, I'd rather do a sequel than a prequel, because obviously I'm anytime like every time do a fucking sequel rather than a prequel. So I thought that was stupid. I didn't like the characterization of Leatherface in this, just in terms of like who he was before, because it makes absolutely no sense in terms of where he goes after this. So yeah, this one to me was it's very forgettable. I don't know if it's the worst, but it's one that I probably will never watch again. I felt like they're trying to build up this like mystery or a twist that just never really worked anyway.
Well, just because it's continuing the timeline from the last movie, I'll bring this up. Texas Chainsaw 3D for me feels like, it got a lot of shit wrong, but it feels like it was at least made with heart. It didn't feel like a big corporate kind of like grab. I get a lot from it. I don't get that from Leatherface 2017. I just wrote, it's one thing to have some dysfunctional patterns put into motion when he's a child, Leatherface, Jed, to establish like tribalism and denial at an early age. But it's an entirely other thing to depict this family of origin as having always been complete on-brand batshit. Like, the fact that they're like training him and recruiting him to kill, I always got the feeling from the first movie and from the early sequels that this was a family that could have been once normal, maybe even once great, and then slowly, as the voices of reason started to die off, madness took over, and then suddenly we have like the mad people raising the younger ones. But I felt like that really started with that core group of the brothers. Like, I thought with the absence of like a female influence or the absence of, like a town that's like dying around them or whatever, which I'd never even really thought about that, but it's in this movie. I still, something about it feels completely implausible. The fact that Verna was like this, she seemed to be such a tender soul in her golden years. And now we're seeing Lily Taylor with her arms crossed going like, you judging my boy, and I'm just like,
when it was
what is happening?
Marilyn Burns, it was a much nicer version. When she was dead, she was nice. Yeah. Also, I've seen it like 4 times now, this movie. I always forget Stephen Dorff is in this, but I never forget Lily Taylor is in it, so take from that what you will. Okay. And also, this happened with the beginning also. You mentioned it as far as origin story. This is something I noticed that actually really pissed me off. Because you have this legendary horror character with Leatherface in any of these movies. And what so many of these movies are assigned the task of is telling his origin story. And yet they make a movie about literally anybody else. This is one of the most interesting slashers, like, in the history of the subgenre. And he's literally from, I'd say, 3, Leatherface 3 on, where he's largely sidelined too. He is the cover. He is the movie poster for every one of those movies that follows. He's the draw. We're fascinated by him. We're going to keep going and seeing movies that have a Leatherface. I mean, he's the only through line family member that is in every single movie. It's almost kind of like the Hellraiser franchise, just in terms of, because like, I won't go too much into the Hellraisers, but even in the first one, like the Cenobites weren't really like the main focal point of the movie. But once you get into like 5 and onwards, like all of those were spec scripts that were turned into Hellraiser movies. So Pinhead is never really like in it as much as like you would expect, especially since like Pinhead is always on like the cover of all these movies. So that's kind of like maybe why, because I know that like Leatherface and Pinhead are considered to be like on a lower echelon as compared to Michael, Freddy, and Jason, and it's probably because of like bullshit like this, where it's like where they were misused and mishandled and improperly advertised. But I get what you're saying, because I noticed that too, like especially in terms of like the 2 origin chapters, where it felt like we're putting more attention onto these, and not necessarily less interesting family members, but just like family members who don't really matter outside of the movie that they're in. So it's like, why are we creating an origin story for a brand new character when you already have this pre-existing one?
And also, this movie has Drayton and Nubbins in the movie. And I think Grandpa, arguably. But the problem is, none of them dominate the screen like at any particular point. They're there. And but we get, what do we get? We get like the fucking nurse, we get Clarice, and we get fucking Ike, and we get, that's another thing, the fucking twist. The fact that we're led to believe that, because they all don't have their real names when they come into the asylum or whatever, the sanitarium. So they all change these other names. So we're led to believe that the big guy is, it's the most
I
twist.
never for a second, like, I always knew that it was going to be the Jackson, I guess, because of that line at the beginning where they, like, if they had just not put that line in there where like people didn't have their names, I would have probably assumed that the bigger guy was Leatherface. But the whole thing, it was just like the characterization of Leatherface, pre-Leatherface, compared to now Leatherface, it didn't add up for me, and I don't know. I will say, like, this was a very violent movie. Like, they kind of went there with some of the gore. But I'm like, that's not really the most important aspect of these movies to me, so I don't know.
That's not what put Texas Chainsaw Massacre on the map, was gore. It was all implied. But for some reason, why does Clarice have to be astride the corpse of a guy who committed suicide while she's getting fucked from behind by Ike in that trail? Like, it's like, again, look how creepy I am. Look how gross I can be. They're gonna climb inside of a cow. I don't care. The only saving grace for me is like a few sprinklings. Like, there's one line where they're sitting in the diner right before they start doing their robbery or whatever, and going nuts and killing people. Yeah, right. Where he's sitting there and Jackson is sitting with the nurse and he says, I wish this was just normal. I wish we were just here at a diner. I wish I was someone else. And I'm like, that feels like a Leatherface line. See, you should have gone more in that direction. I mean, we don't need all this like bait and switch and like, oh, you thought it was this guy the whole time, but it's really this guy. It's like, I don't care. Yeah. And the only other thing that I kind of like that keeps the movie from being the absolute bottom of the barrel for me with this franchise is I can dig kind of the end, because at least something's happening where I'm like, oh, look, a guy who's walking like Leatherface and has his face all jacked up is like, I mean, he doesn't have a face on yet, but he's got his face jacked up. He's carrying a chainsaw, is chasing someone in the woods. And then later he sews a face and everything and is putting it together. And he's not doing it in like a necessarily grisly kind of way. Like he's doing it with a sewing machine, with a very kind of like quiet refinement with nice music playing. That's what chills me. Like that, more of that.
I mean, yeah,
would have been great.
That's the whole problem with prequels in general. It's just like you're making a movie that's not the movie that it should be, and then giving us that movie in like the last 5 minutes. So, and especially, and this is also like it's like the M. Night Shyamalan like movie thing where it's like the entire movie is predicated on a plot twist. And of course that's, not knowing which one he is. So yeah, it was dumb. Alternate title?
No.
You don't have one?
Alternate titles? I do. Because I had a lot of time. So I wrote Rural Interrupted. Because of the Bonnie and Clyde angle. Yeah, thank you. Because of the Bonnie and Clyde angle, I did 2 takes on Bonnie and Clyde because they're like, not, on the run from the law and everything. So I wrote Yanni and Fried because that's how I feel when I watch this piece of shit. And then I thought to describe, the character we're supposed to believe is Leatherface. What is Leatherface? He's brawny and wide. And I have 2 more. Hillbilly hostage hijinks. And my favorite, One Poo Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Gross.
Thank you.
Very nice. Yeah. I'm just gonna call it Asylum. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Asylum.
You know what?
That was kind of my approach to this alternate title. It's just like give it keep the Texas Chainsaw, but then just give us 1 word or 2 or 3 or whatever, just to identify what it is outside of the rest of the movies. So I took too much inspiration from
Liza. No,
go ahead.
I took too much inspiration from Liza Minnelli when she was told about like the premise for Cabaret by Kander and Ebb, and she was like, "Well, what are we going to do? A musical about Nazis? We're going to call it Nifty Nazi Follies." That's what I had in my head while I was watching these movies. What's like a Texas Chainsaw take on Nifty Nazi Follies? Anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say I'm not going to get you to rank these because I'm not even going to rank them at this point, but at least tell me which is your least favorite.
Least favorite is the beginning. There's literally nothing redeeming about Texas Chainsaw Massacre the beginning for me outside of one thing. I think it was the fact that there was a chainsaw on the floor and they threw the biker on it, and he died that way rather than like running him over. And I was just kind of like,
that was the guy from Oz, from like the prison show.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I forget his name. He's
my
been
God!
In a bunch of I recognized him immediately. I think that I'm probably gonna go with 3 because it's the most but it's a tough one. I tentatively right now I'll say it's the 3rd one for me.
Okay.
But anyway, that's all we have until the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre comes out. So that's going to bring us to the Cherry Picker.
Yes!
Now, last week we did Valentine, and I chose Jason Marquette, who was Katherine Heigl's date at the beginning of the movie, and he showed up again later on at the art exhibit. And you chose Detective Vaughn, and this is interesting because Well, first of all, I just want to point out that the community tab on the Cherry Picker channel here is not active yet. I guess it takes it only becomes active when you hit 500 subscribers. And at the time of this recording, we're at 1,000. But then it takes a week after that to go into effect. So hopefully by the time this episode comes available, it will be there, and I'll have the vote on there. Otherwise, the only other way to vote is on my Instagram channel or Instagram account, and also on Patreon if you're a patron supporter. And I was going to say this is interesting because I have two different polls here of where they go different ways. So on Patreon, Jason Marquette got 2 votes and Detective Vaughn got 5. So I know that you've said before that my Patreon supporters are biased to me and only vote in my favor, and that is not true, as evidenced by this. But on Instagram, it told a different story because we had 126 for Jason Marquette and 77 for Detective Vaughn. So we have in total Jason Marquette with 128 to Vaughn's 82. I don't know if you wanted to add anything else.
I'm appalled, but but okay, whatever. I concede.
I mean, they're both appalling characters. I think one is just he didn't die. You know, I think that's kind of like where I go with my choices a lot of the times. Like I look for who didn't die, who should have. And I don't think I'm going to stray from that for the Texas Chainsaw franchise Cherry Picker, because I'm going to choose the character. And from Texas Chainsaw 3D, his name was Deputy Carl Hartman, who was the Scott Eastwood character.
Okay.
And I mean, but the main reason is that he didn't die. And I think that this is like, because he was basically set up to be like, we really hate this guy. Like he deceived Heather through like flirtation, and you know, like once he got her into the car at the end, took her somewhere against her will, tied her up inside that barn, and like, you know, took her, like opened her shirt. That was another, like in that scene where she, like, that was disturbing, where he had the chainsaw and the open shirt. I didn't like that. Like normally, like things like that don't like gross me out or anything, but that particularly, like that upset me. But outside of that, it's just like we see him when like his father pulls up and the other guy, and he's just out there like smoking a cigarette as villains do. And what do? They're just like, all right, get out of here. And like, no, you be like, we're gonna need your help in there because you don't know this, but Leatherface is going to... no, not even Leatherface. I would have liked it if Heather, you know, was the one to do him in. So just the fact that he went on to live another day, and that day never came because the next movie decided to be a prequel, that is the greatest offense. So I think that, you know, he deserved to die the most out of ever. And it's hard because there's a lot of, like, despicable people in this franchise, but that one just came to mind.
There are.
Most. So I'm going with Deputy Carl.
Okay. Yeah. And also, just before I give my Cherry Picker, I just thought of another alternate title for Texas Chainsaw 3D. Heatherface. It was right there!
Oh my god, that's so good. Heatherface. That is a good one. I'm very impressed with that. And that's the only way I'm going to refer to that character from now on, is Heatherface.
Oh my god, I love that. Yeah. I love that. Yes, please do, because we're going to talk more about her. But and okay, for my I don't do the who didn't die, who deserved to die. Sometimes I do, but in this case, somebody I think died. I mean, I don't even remember. I forget this movie like 2 days after I've seen it, so I don't even remember exactly what happens to him, but I'll say Alfredo from Leatherface Texas Chainsaw Part 3, just because he's the character I'm the least comfortable around, and that is saying something in a franchise that has a Sheriff Hoyt and that has a fucking Ike in Leatherface 2017. I don't like any of them, but I do like Arlie Ermy as an actor, and I like the actor who played Ike. I don't like this actor who played Alfredo. It's not like a good enough. It's not a bad performance. Like, it's effective, but it's not a good enough performance that I can detach and go like, what a good actor. It's just like good enough to like get under my skin and bother me with all of his little kind of like space invasion, the fact that he's watching her pee, the fact that he feels justified in everything that he does. He just feels like such just like the worst thing about the world at large. So Alfredo Part 3, gross. Just
he's also
gross.
He's also just like taking all like the shitty parts of like previous characters and putting them into a new one. Like, there's nothing original about him.
No, and he's also just like his appetites are all even more base level, like Hitchhiker. There's an innocence to him. I like the fact that he reminds me of a puppy dog that just doesn't know not to jump up on you. And same thing with, like I said, with Bubba, like that could have been really perverse, him like pushing his chainsaw like teeth into but onto Stretch's cooch and everything like that. But I watch it and I'm just kind of like, oh, kid. And because she's not like doing the typical thing, like going, oh my God. She's actually like, oh, I have a way out here. Okay, cool. You good? Are you good? And I'm like, yes, strategy. But this guy, I wouldn't want anybody to try and like kind of use Alfredo to get, because there's no, he's too irredeemable and disgusting there.
I mean, I also just think he's like really annoying. Like, just every moment that he was on screen, I was just like, I'd rather we like, why aren't we watching one of the other characters? Give us more Little Girl, give us more Viggo Mortensen, or even the mom. And I'm assuming that was Verna in Part 3.
I honestly, I feel
Verna
like
proxy
I said,
or something.
How could it be? I mean, but I don't know. But maybe it was his mom. But also, again, inbreeding. We don't know who's related to who and how. People thought when the first Texas Chainsaw got released that the cook, the old man, because he seemed so much older than Leatherface, and even though we never see Leatherface's face, but he seems so much older than the other two, they thought he was their father. And I'm like, well, he could have been their father, brother. I mean, we don't know. But I'm not going to get into the weeds of that.
Anyway, those
there you go, folks.
Those are your picks. You've got Deputy Carl Hartman or Alfredo. And you can vote on the Cherry Picker on YouTube in the community tab. If it's there, hopefully it will be. If not, I'm going to, just follow me on Instagram, Retro Bitch Face. I post the poll on Friday, and obviously those things only last 24 hours, so you don't want to miss it. That's why I want it on the YouTube one, because that'll go as long as we need it to. And also your Instagram, you don't do the poll over there, but if you want people to know where to find you,
if you want to follow me, Edward is Truth, one word, that's my handle. Go for it.
And also, if you would like to support this podcast on Patreon, we also have the poll on there. And you'll also get to see these episodes or listen to these episodes, depending on if you're watching or listening, on the Friday before it's released, because we normally release them publicly on Tuesday. So you'll get a good head start on everyone. And with that, I do want to just shout out some new patrons in the last week that we've had. So welcome aboard Isaac Salazar, Josh Harris, Andre Felix, and Dookie Blair. So welcome all. And Andre Felix is also our editor of these. So thank you to Andre for that as well. And
thank you, Andre.
Yeah, that's super awesome of him. Next week, we're going to be covering... Do you want to let them know? Do you remember?
Ready or Not.
Ready or Not.
That's the title, right?
You say it like it's a bad thing. Yeah, because it's been a while since I've seen this, and I haven't watched it since the new Scream. And, just knowing, it's the same directors, just to kind of like see if I am watching it in a new lens now that we're doing that. So yeah, if you want to, keep up to date with us, watch that movie this week, and we'll be back to discuss it next week. And I think that's all there is to say. I probably forgot something, but yeah, we'll be right back.